What is up, YouTube? I am back with another episode. This is the video portion of my podcast on the book series. My podcast is called Learn or Be Learned. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so successful people and unsuccessful people both have the same goals. But then why are some people successful and others aren't? And that is the question we have to ask ourselves. It can't be goals then. Goals can't be what differentiates successful and unsuccessful people. Everyone has goals, right? So what does determine that? And this book, Atomic Habits, goes over what that is, right? So goals give you a deadline. It gives you a call to action. It gives you kind of a reference frame of what you're trying to focus on. But what keeps you accountable on that is your system, not the goals themselves, right? Systems, habits. And in this episode, I'm going to be discussing 4 problems that the book poses on why goals aren't as good as systems when you're trying to become successful in what you need to do. And then I'm going to go over 4 ways you can either build a good habit or break a bad habit. So the author poses 4 problems on being goal-oriented and not system-oriented. And the first one is that winners and losers both have goals. So how does this determine success, right? We already kind of talked about this when I first started, and it just makes sense, right? We all have goals, but what keeps someone from succeeding and others from failing? And it's the system in place that they use to propel these goals, these focuses that they have. 2, achieving your goal is a momentary success, right? So you say, once I lose 20 pounds, I'll be happy. So this is a goal, and you'll be working out every day, and maybe you'll reach this goal. But once you reach the goal, what happens? We stop working out. We stop going, because we reach the goal, right? That's the thing with the goal, is that's a problem. You are goal-oriented, and once you reach that goal, you have no motivation to continue going, and oftentimes we relapse and bounce back and gain some more weight, or vice versa, right? So people who go to the gym consistently, I'm sure you know someone who loves to work out, and they love to work out because it's a part of their system. And I bet you know some people that hate to work out but still do it every day. Both of these type of people go every day. It's because the system they have in place, not the goal, right? You could say, my goal is to work out every day. But without a system in place, you're not going to actually proceed with that. 3, goals restrict your happiness. When you set a goal, like losing 20 pounds, and let's say you say, I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months, right? And if you don't reach that goal in 3 months, that's discouraging. If you don't start to see progress immediately, that's discouraging because you are goal-oriented. And when you're goal-oriented, your happiness is determined based on the success of you completing that goal, as opposed to enjoying the journey and the system behind that goal. And I think that's a big thing that this author talks about as a problem. You want to fall in love with the journey, and when you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you start to fall in love with this journey, and you don't have to give yourself permission anymore to be happy. You're happy consistently with the journey, and rather than just basing your happiness off an end product. And 4, goals conflict with long-term progress. Kind of like the idea I talked about with losing 20 pounds. When you have to lose 20 pounds, you're going to have that goal, and then once that goal is over, your system is gone, your motivation for that is gone because the goal has been reached. And this hinders long-term progress because you're no longer going to the gym because you've already reached it. And that's kind of the basis behind this book, is how to build systems, which in turn build habits, versus having goals and trying to build habits off of these goals. The purpose of setting goals is to win a game, and the purpose of creating systems is to continue playing the game, right? So none of us want to just work out for a week and reach our result and then never work out again. You want to consistently work out. Why? Because that gives you long-term benefits. And this is the meaning behind the phrase atomic habits. It's a regular practice of routine that is not only small and easy to do, but also a source of incredible power, a component of a system of compound growth. So let's ask ourselves, why is it so hard to quit a bad habit, right? Because we're so outcome-based approach rather than identity-based approach. And what do I mean by this? So let's take a gym example, right? You want to go to the gym and you start thinking, okay, I need to work out, I need to become better, I need to go harder at the gym, I need to lose this weight, I need to run more, whatever it is. But instead, if you gave yourself an identity-based approach you know, instead of the outcome-based approach, you would have this idea where you're thinking, I'm an athlete. And it's cheesy, but if you trick your brain into thinking, oh, I'm an athlete, then you're going to be more likely to go harder in the gym just because the way you think, the way you think you are is very powerful. The brain is incredibly powerful behind this. And we see this with smokers, right? People, let's take an example. Two people. One, they're both offered a cigarette. One says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." And the other says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." And this is very subtle, but the first example, the person saying, "Oh, I'm trying to quit," because they identify themselves still as a smoker, as someone who is trying to quit a bad habit because they identify themselves as a person who is addicted and is a smoker. While the second person identifies himself as, "No, I'm no longer a smoker, I'm not a smoker," and therefore they've changed their identity of how they view themselves. And this is so small, and this sounds really, really cheesy. I mean, like when I read it, when I thought about it, I was like, it's kind of cheesy, but it really does work with how you determine who you are. Your identity shapes your habits, and your habits shape your identity. It's a feedback loop. And when you start believing in yourself as an athlete, you gain more confidence in what you do. You gain more grit, more passion, ambition, because you see yourself as that. Whether that's true or not, whether, you know, some people might say, "Oh, you're not an athlete. Like, I'm an athlete. I've been playing basketball for 10 years and I'm in college basketball." That doesn't matter. What matters is how you see yourself. And how you see yourself will propel you in preparing these better habits. And this book says, true behavior change is identity change. The goal is not to read a book, it's to become a reader. The goal is not to write, it's to become a writer, right? You don't want to just do these one-time things. You don't want to say, "Oh, I want to read one book." You want to say, "Oh, I want to become a reader. I am a reader." And that will propel you into better habits simply just by a mind shift change. Right? And so this is a 2 simple step process. Decide what type of person you want to be, and then prove it to yourself with small wins. And simple as that. And lastly, what I want to say before we jump into the 4 ways to build a good habit and 4 ways to break a bad habit is compounding is everything in habit formation, right? So this is why habit building is so hard. We all jump into it. We go, okay, I'm going to start meditating for 30 minutes. And it drops. You drop it very quickly. Why is that, right? So the thing about compounding is there was this graph in the book, Figure 1, where it talks about how we see habit growth as linear, but what it actually is exponential. So if you overlap these 2 lines on the graph, you get a little intersection, and in this intersection there's this little valley, and this valley is called the valley of disappointment because we don't see growth, we don't see change, and we get discouraged by this. And since habits are exponential, we actually see more success from them the longer you go. That's why when you first go to the gym, you don't see any results. After a few months, you start seeing immense results, and that is encouraging. And so the hardest part is getting over this valley of disappointment. And that's why compounding is important. So here's the math behind that. If you do 1% better every day, you become 37 times better by the end of the year. And conversely, if you got 1% worse every day, you'd be nearly down to 0. Right? So start with small wins. It's so important. And habits are like a double-edged sword, right? Bad habits can cut you down just as well as good habits can build you up. So habits is everything. And I like this quote that the book mentions. It says, "All big things come from small beginnings. The seed of every habit is a single tiny decision. But as the decision is repeated, a habit sprouts and grows stronger. Roots entrench themselves and branches grow." And it has to be small. You have to start small. And I think that's the hardest thing. Like, I see that being difficult all the time. I just want to jump in. But I've noticed from personal experience, every time I jump into something new, a new habit breaks immediately, right? Maybe a week max. I don't know. But you got to start smaller. Okay, so here are 4 simple steps to build a good habit or break a bad one. To build a good habit, one, make it obvious. Mark a calendar as you build the habit, right? So as you do the habit every day, mark the calendar, and you start seeing this momentum grow and this chain growing, and you're not going to want to break the chain. Or you could get a habit tracker app and see statistics behind that and stuff like that. There's also two other things you can try. You can make it visible and you can habit stack, right? So for example, if you want to start flossing daily, put your floss next to your toothbrush. What this does is it removes resistance and it removes the friction of doing this habit, right? So sometimes you'll be like, I'm too lazy, like I don't want to go dig through my bag and find the floss. You're adding layers of resistance. So putting your floss right next to your toothbrush, and hopefully you brush twice a day already, this is a habit you already acquire naturally, you can do things called habit stacking. So you can stack a habit that you want to do with a habit you already do. So since you already brush, you can immediately after floss or floss right before. But what this does is it stacks your habits, and you can stack multiple habits as much as you're willing to do, right? So if you want to also meditate, you could brush your teeth, floss, and then meditate immediately. And the key here is, like I said, with the 1% growth, you might want to start with just 1 minute of meditation for the first week or first month, and then slowly grow to 2 and 3 and 5, then 10 minutes. And you want to slowly increase that level. Because if you initially say, I'm going to do 30 minutes, it's just not going to happen. 1 minute is a lot easier to do. And to break a bad habit, one, you want to make it invisible. You either want to remove the cue or change the cue that exists. A cue initiates your response to the bad habit and the craving for it, right? So for example, let's say a smoker always smokes when they go to their porch. What this has done is it's made the porch a cue for smoking. So every time you go on the porch, you're going to have the craving to smoke. And what you could do is either avoid the porch, or you can change what you do on the porch to change that cue. So maybe when you go to the porch, you start reading a book. And this is really hard. I think it's better to change the cue than to avoid it, because let's say you stop smoking after a year and you go to that porch, you might still find that urge and that tendency or whatever bad habit you're doing, right? So I think changing the cue is a lot more beneficial long term. That's just my personal opinion from what I've gotten from this book. Building a good habit number 2, you want to make it attractive, right? There's a thing called temptation bundling, where you combine an action you want to do with an action you need to do, right? So let's say you want to start listening to more podcasts like mine, right? You like how I said that? You like how I slid that in there? Anyways, let's say you want to start listening to more podcasts by me because, you love my podcasts, and thank you for that. You can listen to podcasts in the car, right? So something that you need to do is drive to work. So you get in your car. So that is a task you need to do. And now you can combine that with a task you want to do. It's called temptation bundling. And this can work for various different ways, right? You might want to join a culture that already enacts this habit as a norm, right? So going to the gym instead of working out at home might give you more motivation to start working out more. You want to indulge yourself in an atmosphere that already enacts in these better habits that you're trying to build for yourself. Or you can do something you enjoy right before doing something that's more difficult. So let's say you want to start eating salads every day. Maybe you eat a piece of dark chocolate right before. So you've primed your brain for something that's attractive and following that with something that is less than ideal that you like, right? Like eating that devilish salad. Anyways, breaking habit number 2 is making it unattractive. So reframing your mind and reframing yourself on why these habits are bad is a really good way to break a habit. So for example, right before you indulge in another bad habit that you do, maybe keep a note somewhere very easily accessible, right? Removing friction. Maybe just keep a sticky note on your desk or something and have reminders of why this habit is bad and why you don't want to do it. And reading this right before you enact in that bad habit will refresh yourself on why you're doing this in the first place. So I think that's a really good way to remove this craving of indulgence. Honestly, money is an excellent motivator as well. You can always say like, hey man, I want to stop watching Netflix. Every time I decide to watch Netflix, I'm going to pay you $10, right? So holding accountability to that, money is an excellent motivator. Building a good habit number 3. You want to make it easy. You want to reduce the friction. And I've already kind of mentioned this in step 1 where I said make it obvious, right, with the floss example. You want to reduce friction. This is so important, right? If you want to learn how to play the guitar, instead of keeping the guitar in its sleeve in the closet, which adds layers of friction, try keeping it on a stand in the living room or in your office room, wherever you're most likely to play the guitar, right? So if you think that you play the guitar in the living room, keep it right there. So every time you are in the living room, you're more likely to just pick it up and start messing around with it. And this removes layer of friction to enact in these better habits. You just play for 5 minutes every day the guitar. Over time, you'll start getting better and you'll start seeing progress, and this momentum will actually push you to keep going. And that is so important. And there's another thing he mentions called the 2-minute rule, right? So make it a habit where you can do in under 2 minutes or less. So if you want to start journaling more, maybe start with just writing 1 sentence every day. Maybe eventually you want to spend 15 minutes of brainstorming and creative idea thinking, or just jotting down on the page how you feel that day, whatever it is. If you want to start journaling more, start with a sentence. That takes less than 2 minutes, and what that does is over time it builds that compounding effect. And for breaking bad habits, number 3 is make it difficult. This is the exact opposite of building good habit number 3, where you want to remove layers. In this step of breaking a bad habit, you want to add layers of friction. So if you want to stop watching Netflix during the day, put the TV remote in a difficult place, or delete the app on your iPhone or wherever you watch it the most to add these layers of friction. This will make you second guess yourself in the process of why you're trying to get it back. Right? So maybe you're going to go dig for that remote and you're like, you know what? Like, I don't need this. I should go do some work. So adding the layers of friction can prevent you from continuing these bad habits that you do. Building good habits number 4 is make it satisfying. So positive reinforcement is an excellent way to continue good habits. So by rewarding yourself immediately after a habit, that reinforces the cue for your brain to say, oh, I like this. This is good. Let me keep doing that. I like that, right? So you want to be cautious though. So here's the disclaimer, right? You don't want to make this reward a bad habit while you're trying to build a good one. This just detracts from it, right? So you don't want to reward yourself with a pizza every time you go to the gym. You want to build a reward system that pushes you to further your good habits. So instead, after you go to the gym, maybe reward yourself with an episode of Netflix or something, right? Something that doesn't detract from the good habit, but also gives you that reward stimulus that you want, right? And another important thing that the book mentions is the rule of don't miss twice. So if you miss the habit one day, make it absolutely necessary that you bounce back the next day. After you skip more than 2 days, you naturally start to lean off, right? I think the best example here is working out. I think so many people want to do it, but you start going for a little while, you're gaining momentum, you're starting to see a little bit of results, and then something comes up and you miss the gym for a day. And then something else comes up and you miss the second day. And then slowly you start pushing gym as a lower priority and you stop doing that good habit. And for breaking bad habits, number 4 is make it unsatisfying, right? So you can always get an accountability partner. I have a friend where at the end of the month we discuss our goals, and this keeps us on track for the both of us by being accountable, right? So I have to confront someone why I didn't succeed or what I'm not doing or like what I've been messing around with, instead of doing what I told my friend I would do at the end of the last month, right? So, and this also makes you feel a little bit bad if your accountability partner is doing everything they want to do and you're not doing it. So it's like motivating that way as well, right? So you can also make your habits cost something, whether that's money, or you can say something like, hey man, if I don't work out every day for the next 6 months, I will give you my PS5. And I'm sure that deal would turn some of you into gym junkies, because I know how much of a craze there is for a PS5, right? So there's things like that you can do. And you're probably like, oh shit, I'm not giving my PS5, like screw you. Whatever you are willing to do to build good habits is as far as you're willing to go. Try it out. So this book overall, I think it was an amazing book. I highly recommend this book to those of you who are interested. I hope this summarized episode gives you some ideas and some things to think about while you try it out for yourself. I'd love to know what you guys think about the tactics from this book or ideas that you try or things that are successful for you for building stronger habits. I'd love to read those in the comments. Please let me know what you think. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.